By the time I realized something was terribly wrong, my daughter had already spent hours sitting alone in the freezing rain outside our own house. My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and on February 13th, my 12-year-old daughter Lily came home from school and discovered her key no longer worked. Earlier that morning, my mother had secretly changed every lock in the house without telling either of us. Then she left Lily standing outside in the cold for 5 straight hours, while she sat inside pretending not to hear her knocking. At 8:30 that night, my mother finally opened the front door just long enough to spit out words that shattered my child. "A mistake like you doesn't belong under this roof. Get out of my sight." Rainwater streamed down Lily's face as she looked at me and whispered the question no child should ever have to ask. "Mom, am I really Dad's daughter?" I took my daughter and left that house at 10 o'clock that same night. 3 days later, official letters started arriving at my mother's door. After that came 86 missed calls. My family believed I was weak because my husband was deployed overseas with the military. They thought I had nobody protecting me. They were wrong. What happened after those letters arrived destroyed everything my mother thought she controlled. But before any of that happened, before the police reports and attorneys and court hearings, we were a normal family. I met my husband, Ryan Bennett, in 2013 when I was working at a coffee shop outside Colorado Springs. I was 21 back then. Ryan was 24 and had just completed officer training with the Army. The first thing I noticed about him was how tired he looked. The second thing I noticed was the ridiculous tip he left for a simple cup of coffee. When I tried handing the money back, he smiled at me and said, "Keep it. You smiled at me like I mattered." That was how it started. We got married the next summer. I wore my grandmother's old wedding dress, and Ryan wore his military dress uniform. We were young, broke, and absolutely certain we belonged together. Our daughter Lily was born the following year. Ryan held her before I did. I remember watching him count her tiny fingers over and over while tears filled his eyes. That night, after everyone else left the hospital room, I asked what he'd whispered to her when she was born. He looked down at our daughter sleeping in the bassinet and quietly said, "I promised her I'd protect her forever." For 12 years, he kept that promise. In 2019, we bought our first house together in Fort Collins. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, a blue front door, a maple tree in the front yard that turned bright gold every fall. Lily chose the curtains for her room herself, purple fabric covered with silver stars. She was only 4 years old, standing in the middle of the store aisle, pointing at them like there was no other option in the world. "Those are mine," she said confidently. The deed carried both our names, Claire Bennett, Ryan Bennett. That house belonged to us in every possible way. Ryan had already survived 2 deployments before 2025. We made it through both. Lily got older each time, old enough to understand what deployment really meant. She started counting down days on a purple calendar hanging beside her bed. This deployment was supposed to be routine. 6 months overseas, nothing unusual. The morning Ryan left, Lily cried so hard she made herself sick in the airport bathroom. We had driven to Denver before sunrise, exhausted and emotional. The airport lights felt painfully bright. Ryan picked Lily up one last time before security and whispered something in her ear that made her nod through tears. After he disappeared into the terminal, Lily looked at me and said, "Dad told me to be brave, but I don't feel brave." I wrapped my arms around her shoulders and answered, "You don't have to feel brave. You just keep moving anyway." That became our routine. October disappeared beneath school mornings, homework, grocery runs, and lonely nights. I worked from home as a freelance designer, which meant I could be there for Lily, but it also meant too much silence once the house settled at night. Every evening, Lily asked me the same thing. "When's Dad calling?" "Whenever he can, baby." Sometimes Ryan managed quick video calls full of static and delay. Other times, we only got short messages. "Safe. Love you both. Tell Lily I'm proud of her." By November, I was exhausted. I was trying to balance work, parenting, bills, the house, and my own anxiety while pretending everything was fine for Lily's sake. That was when my mother offered to move in temporarily. "Let me help you," she said over the phone. "You can't keep doing everything alone." My relationship with my mother had always been complicated. Diane Carter criticized everything in my life: my marriage, my parenting, my career, even the way I organized my kitchen cabinet somehow bothered her. But I was tired enough to ignore my instincts, so I told her yes. She arrived during the first week of November, carrying 3 giant suitcases and acting kinder than I'd seen her act in years. At first, it felt like a blessing. She cooked dinner every night. She picked Lily up from school. She cleaned the kitchen before I even noticed the dishes. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. Lily seemed happy too. We video called Ryan on Thanksgiving. The three of us crowded around my laptop while my mother waved from the background. Ryan looked exhausted overseas, thinner than usual, but relieved to see us smiling. "You okay?" he asked me quietly after Lily ran to grab dessert. "Yeah," I told him honestly. "Mom's been helping a lot." He nodded slowly. "Good. I worry about you." That was the last time I truly believed everything was okay. Everything started changing in December. At first, it was subtle enough that I convinced myself I was imagining it. One afternoon, I walked into the garage and found my mother digging through old storage boxes. She was sitting on the floor holding a photograph from a design conference I attended years earlier in Denver. It was nothing special, just a group picture with several people standing shoulder to shoulder after a workshop. But the expression on my mother's face made my stomach tighten. "Who's this?" she asked coldly, pointing toward a man standing 2 spots away from me. I frowned. "A designer from the conference. Why?" "You never mentioned him." "There were 8 people there, Mom. It was a professional event." She stared at the photo for another few seconds before taking it into her bedroom without another word. That should have been my warning. After that day, her comments slowly became stranger. "Lily doesn't really look like our side of the family, does she? Funny how she resembles Ryan's mother more than anyone else." "Do you think children always know who their real fathers are?" At first, I brushed it off as bitterness or loneliness. My father had been gone for years, and sometimes grief changed people in ugly ways. But by January, the questions became more direct. "Were you truly happy before Ryan deployed?" "Marriage is difficult. People make mistakes." "Did you ever regret settling down so young?" Every conversation felt loaded with something darker underneath. Then one night in early February, after Lily had gone to bed, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "Were you faithful to Ryan?" I stared at her in disbelief. "What?" "You heard me." "Of course I was faithful." She crossed her arms. "That little girl doesn't look like him." I felt anger rise so fast it almost made me dizzy. "What is wrong with you?" "I found that conference photo," she snapped. "You expect me to believe nothing happened?"
There were 8 people in that picture.
"But when were you really with him?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I have never cheated on my husband," I said through clenched teeth. "Not once." My mother smiled in a way that made my skin crawl. "DNA doesn't lie." I should have thrown her out that night. I know that now. But she was still my mother, and some part of me kept believing I could fix whatever had broken inside her. 3 days later, she called a locksmith. I was in my office handling a Zoom meeting when the doorbell rang downstairs. I heard voices, tools, drilling. When my meeting ended, I walked into the kitchen and found my mother calmly drinking tea. "What was that?" "The locks were replaced," she answered casually. "The old ones weren't secure." I blinked at her. "You changed the locks without asking me?" She shrugged. "I was protecting the house." "It's not your house." The smile she gave me then felt deeply unsettling. Isn't it? She kept every copy of the new keys except one, which she handed to me later that evening. When Lily asked about hers, my mother smiled sweetly and said, "I'll get you one soon, sweetheart." She never did. February 13th was a Friday. Lily had gotten an A on a spelling test that morning and couldn't wait to tell everyone about it. I remember kissing her forehead before school while she waved the paper proudly in front of me. That afternoon, I was working from a coffee shop downtown because the internet there was faster for client meetings. I had 3 back-to-back video calls scheduled and barely touched my phone for hours. What I didn't know was that Lily had walked home from school around 3:30 p.m. while cold rain started falling across the neighborhood. She reached the front door and tried her key. It didn't work. She tried again. Nothing. Then she knocked. "Grandma? Grandma, my key won't work." No answer. Inside the house, my mother was sitting in the living room with the television turned up loud enough to drown out Lily's voice. Lily knocked again. "Grandma, it's me." Still nothing. By then, the rain had become heavier. Lily sat on the porch steps and pulled her backpack over her head to protect her homework from getting soaked. Then she texted me. "Mom, my key isn't working." I never saw the message. My phone was charging in my bag while I presented slides to a client. A few minutes later, she texted again. "Grandma won't answer." Then again. "I'm still outside. It's getting cold." I missed every single message. Across the street, our neighbor, Martha Reynolds, came home carrying grocery bags and immediately noticed Lily sitting on the porch completely drenched. Martha hurried across the street holding an umbrella. "Honey, how long have you been out here?" Lily looked up with pale lips and shaking hands. "Since school ended." Martha checked her watch. "Nearly 3 hours. Where's your grandmother?" "Inside. She won't open the door." Martha marched to our front porch and pounded on the door. "Diane, open this door right now!" The television was blaring loudly inside the house. No response. Martha looked back at Lily sitting there soaked to the bone and finally made the decision that changed everything. She called the police. Officer Daniel Ruiz arrived a little after 7 that evening. By then, my daughter had been sitting outside in freezing rain for almost 4 hours. Martha later told me that the moment the officer stepped out of his patrol car and saw Lily shaking on the porch, his entire expression changed. He approached her carefully and crouched beside her. "Hey there," he said gently. "What's your name?" "Lily." "How long have you been outside, Lily?" "Since school ended." He looked at his watch. Almost 4 hours. "Is someone home?" "My grandma," Lily whispered, "but she won't let me in." Officer Ruiz walked to the front door and knocked hard enough for the sound to echo through the entire street. "Fort Collins Police Department, open the door." Inside, my mother heard him. She still refused to answer. He knocked again. "Ma'am, there's a child outside who's been exposed to severe weather for hours. I need you to open this door immediately." For a few seconds there was silence. Then my mother's voice finally came through the door. "This is a family issue. Leave." Officer Ruiz stared at the door in disbelief. "Ma'am, this is now a child welfare situation." "This is my house," she snapped. "Go away." Meanwhile, Martha wrapped Lily in towels and brought her hot chocolate from inside her own house. But Lily was terrified to leave the porch. "What if my mom comes home and can't find me?" she asked. So Martha stayed there with her. Officer Ruiz remained on scene, documenting everything with his body camera running continuously. Then at 7:46 p.m., my mother made the mistake that destroyed her. She pulled back the living room curtain and looked directly at Lily sitting outside in the rain. Officer Ruiz saw her clearly. So did Martha. So did our Ring doorbell camera. My mother stared at my daughter for several long seconds and smiled. Not sadly, not nervously, not confused. Satisfied. Then she slowly closed the curtain again. Later, Officer Ruiz wrote in his report that the behavior appeared deliberate and intentional. He specifically described the smile. Martha took another time-stamped photo from across the street. Evidence. At 8:20 p.m., I finally finished my last client meeting. I grabbed my phone from my bag and immediately saw multiple missed calls and text notifications from Lily. The second I read the first message, my blood ran cold. I called her instantly. She answered on the first ring. "Mom?" Her voice was shaking so badly I barely recognized it. "Baby, where are you?" "I'm outside." "What do you mean, outside?" "My key doesn't work. Grandma won't let me in." Then another voice came onto the line. "Man, this is Officer Ruiz with Fort Collins Police." Everything inside me stopped. He calmly explained the situation while I stood frozen beside my table in the coffee shop. "Your daughter has been locked out of the residence since approximately 3:30 this afternoon. An adult inside the home is refusing her entry." I was already grabbing my keys before he finished speaking. "I'm on my way." I drove home faster than I ever had in my life. Rain hammered the windshield while my hands shook so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. When I turned into my driveway at 8:45 p.m., the first thing I saw was my daughter curled up on the porch steps beside a police officer. She looked tiny, soaked, broken. I ran to her. The moment I wrapped my arms around her, she collapsed against me, crying. "I'm sorry," I kept saying over and over. "I'm so sorry." Then she whispered the sentence that shattered me. "Mom, am I really Dad's daughter?" For a second, I couldn't even breathe. I pulled back and held her face in both my hands. "You are absolutely Ryan's daughter. Absolutely. Your grandmother lied to you." Officer Ruiz approached carefully while I tried to calm Lily down. "Mrs. Bennett," he said quietly, "I need to show you something." Standing right there in the driveway, he played footage from his body camera. I watched my mother look through the window at my daughter. I watched her smile. I watched her close the curtain while Lily sat outside, freezing. Something inside me changed permanently in that moment. "This was intentional," Officer Ruiz told me softly. "I'm filing a criminal report." I walked to the front door and tried my own key. It didn't fit. My own house, the house Ryan and I bought together, the house both our names were legally attached to, locked against me. Officer Ruiz took my statement, while Martha explained everything she had witnessed. He photographed Lily's soaked clothes, her shaking hands, and the messages she had sent me throughout the evening. Then he told me something even worse. About 15 minutes before I arrived, my mother had finally opened the door briefly while he was standing there with Lily. And with a police officer directly witnessing it, she had looked at my daughter and said, "A bastard doesn't belong under this roof." Then she slammed the door in their faces. By the time Officer Ruiz finished filing the report, it included child endangerment, emotional abuse of a minor, witness statements, body camera evidence, and ring camera footage. The investigation officially began that night, but I still couldn't get into my own house. My mother had every key, so I did the only thing left to do. I took my daughter and left. We checked into a hotel a little after 10 that night. The woman at the front desk took one look at Lily's soaked clothes and silently handed us extra towels without asking questions. Inside the hotel room, I helped Lily stand beneath warm water while she stared blankly at the shower wall without speaking. When she finally came out wrapped in an oversized robe, I picked up her backpack from beside the heater and opened it. Everything inside was ruined. School papers, books, and the history project she'd spent 2 weeks working on. The pages fell apart in my hands. "My project," she whispered. My heart broke all over again. "We'll redo it," I promised. "I worked really hard on it." I know, baby. A few minutes later, she looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Why did Grandma do this? I had no real answer, so I told her the only truth I could. Something is wrong with her, but none of this is your fault. Around 11 that night, Lily asked me the question I'll never forget. What if what Grandma said is true? I immediately sat beside her on the bed. Listen to me carefully. Ryan Bennett is your father. He loved you before you were even born. He held you first. He named you. You are his daughter in every possible way. But Grandma sounded so sure. She lied. Lily nodded slowly, but I could still see uncertainty in her eyes, and that destroyed me more than anything else. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep beside me in the hotel bed, I sat awake staring at the ceiling with my phone in my hands. It was just after 11 o'clock in Colorado, which meant it was morning overseas where Ryan was deployed. I tried calling his military satellite phone. No answer. I sent messages through every app we used. Emergency. Please call me as soon as you can. Then I contacted his family liaison officer and explained everything in one long, shaking message. I included the police case number, the hotel information, and my contact details. After that, I searched online for emergency family attorneys near Fort Collins. That was how I found Olivia Harper. At 11:34 p.m., I left her office voicemail through tears. My mother locked my daughter outside for 5 hours in freezing rain. There's police footage, witnesses. She changed the locks on our home while my husband is deployed overseas. I don't know what to do anymore. I barely slept that night. Lily cried in her sleep several times calling for her father. Around 6 the next morning, my phone rang. Mrs. Bennett, this is Olivia Harper. I listened to your message. Tell me everything. By 10 o'clock that morning, I was sitting inside her law office while Lily stayed in the waiting room coloring with one of Olivia's assistants. Olivia listened carefully without interrupting me once. She took notes the entire time while I explained everything from the beginning: the strange accusations, the lock change, the rain, the police officer, the insults, all of it. When I finished, Olivia leaned back in her chair and said 4 words that changed everything. This case is prosecutable. I stared at her. What does that mean exactly? It means your mother committed multiple criminal acts. She started counting them off calmly. Child endangerment, emotional abuse of a minor, illegal exclusion from property you legally own, potential identity fraud if she forged authorization for those lock changes. I blinked at her. She can actually be charged? Yes. For the first time since Friday night, I felt something other than panic. Olivia immediately asked for copies of the Ring camera footage. I logged into the app on my phone while she connected it to her office monitor. There were dozens of motion alerts recorded from that afternoon and evening. We watched them one by one. Lily arriving home, trying her key, knocking repeatedly, sitting on the porch in the rain, Martha crossing the street, Officer Ruiz arriving. Then we reached the clip from 7:46 p.m. My mother looking through the window, smiling, closing the curtain. Olivia replayed that one 3 separate times. This proves intent, she said quietly. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then she watched the clip where my mother opened the door long enough to call Lily a bastard. The room fell silent afterward. With a police officer standing right there, Olivia said softly. Your mother handed the prosecution evidence on a silver platter. A few hours later, Child Protective Services contacted me. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, Lily and I were sitting inside a CPS interview room while a caseworker named Denise interviewed us separately. I answered questions about everything that had happened over the previous months. Then Denise spoke privately with Lily. I could hear my daughter's small voice through the wall answering carefully and consistently. When Denise finally returned, Her expression was serious. "We're opening an official investigation for child endangerment." The words felt unreal. That same afternoon, Martha came to our hotel carrying printed photographs and a notarized written statement describing exactly what she witnessed. She looked devastated. "I should have called the police sooner," she kept saying. I grabbed her hands immediately. "You saved my daughter." And it was true. If Martha hadn't stepped in, I don't know how much longer Lily would have stayed outside. Before leaving, Martha hugged Lily tightly. "You are loved, sweetheart," she whispered. Lily burst into tears. A stranger had shown my daughter more kindness in one evening than her own grandmother had shown in months. Later that night, Olivia's office uncovered something even worse. The locksmith company faxed over the original work order for the lock replacement. My stomach dropped the second I saw it. The authorization form had my name signed at the bottom. Except I had never signed it. Olivia compared the forged signature beside my real signature from legal documents. The difference was obvious immediately. My mother had forged my name to gain control of our house. Identity fraud. A felony. I remember sitting there staring at the paperwork, feeling strangely numb. No sadness. No guilt. No sympathy. Just certainty. The next day, I finally reached Ryan. The satellite phone rang twice before he answered. The connection sounded terrible, full of static and delays, but hearing his voice almost made me collapse. "Claire?" The second he heard me crying, his tone changed completely. "What happened?" So I told him everything. Every detail. The rain, the porch, the insults, the police officer, the hotel, the investigation, the forged paperwork. When I finished speaking, there was silence on the line for several long seconds. Then Ryan asked one question. "She called our daughter a bastard?" "Yes." "And there's evidence?" "Body camera footage, ring footage, witnesses." Another silence followed. When Ryan finally spoke again, his voice sounded colder than I had ever heard it. "I'm coming home." "Ryan." "I don't care what I have to do. I'm coming home." I started crying harder. He spoke with Lily for several minutes afterward. "Listen to me carefully, Princess," he told her. "You are my daughter, always. Nobody changes that. Nobody." Lily clutched the phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. "When are you coming home?" "As soon as they let me." That was the first moment since Friday that I saw real hope return to her face. The following evening, Olivia called me again. "We're ready to move forward," she said. "What happens now?" "Your mother receives 3 letters. One came directly from Olivia's law office demanding immediate surrender of the property and all keys. The second came from Child Protective Services, informing my mother that an official investigation had been opened against her. The third came from the police department, notifying her that criminal charges were being reviewed. Olivia arranged for the legal notice to be hand-delivered by a process server that very evening. At 5:30 p.m., the man knocked on our front door while my mother answered. She signed for the envelope without understanding what was inside. According to the process server, her face changed completely while reading it. The letter gave her 72 hours to vacate the property, surrender every key, and cease all contact with Lily immediately. Failure to comply would result in eviction proceedings, criminal escalation, and civil action. The next 2 letters arrived Monday afternoon, and then the phone calls started. The first call came less than 30 minutes after the certified letters were delivered. Blocked number. I stared at the screen while it rang across the hotel room table. I didn't answer. A voicemail appeared moments later. "Claire, I just received some extremely upsetting paperwork. There's clearly been some misunderstanding here. Please call me back." I deleted it without listening twice. Then another call came, then another. By 3 o'clock that afternoon, my mother had already left 6 voicemails. Her tone changed with every message, confused, angry, pleading, threatening. "Claire, this has gone too far. You know I would never hurt Lily. You're destroying this family. Call me right now. At first, I ignored every call silently while Lily colored beside me on the hotel bed, pretending not to listen. But around 4 that afternoon, another voicemail came through that made my blood boil. They're saying I could go to jail, my mother cried through the recording. You wouldn't do that to your own mother, would you? I turned my phone face down after that. By evening, she stopped calling from her own number and started using other phones instead. Relatives, neighbors, friends, anyone willing to let her borrow a phone. My aunt called saying, "Your mother is devastated." One cousin told me, "Families shouldn't do this to each other." Another relative said, "Maybe everyone should calm down before things get worse." Not one of them asked what happened to Lily. Not one. I blocked every single number. By midnight, there had been over 60 calls. The next morning, there were more. At 12:03 a.m., my mother left another voicemail. "You can't ignore me forever." At 1:15 a.m., another. "Your father would be ashamed of you." At 2:30 a.m., she crossed a line I could never forgive. "That child probably isn't even Ryan's anyway." I deleted the message immediately before Lily could ever hear it. At 6:30 in the morning, another voicemail arrived. "You want war? Fine." Then, only 2 hours later, she switched back to crying apologies again. By 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, the calls finally stopped coming from her directly. But other family members continued. I blocked every number without responding once. 86 calls total, 62 from my mother, 24 from relatives and family friends. I answered none of them. Around 11 that morning, Olivia called with new information. "Ryan's emergency leave has been approved." I froze. "What?" "He's coming home. Travel arrangements are already being processed." For the first time in days, I burst into tears from relief instead of fear. "He's really coming?" "Yes," Olivia said gently. "And there's more. Your mother hired an attorney this morning." I laughed bitterly. "Already?" "He contacted me trying to frame this as a family disagreement. I informed him that we have police evidence, child welfare findings, witness statements, and probable identity fraud. This is far beyond a family argument." "What did he say?" "Not much after that." Thursday arrived. 72 hours had passed since the legal notice demanding my mother leave the property. She refused. So Olivia filed emergency removal paperwork immediately. Because the home legally belonged to Ryan and me, my mother had no tenant rights. She was classified as a temporary guest. Friday afternoon, a sheriff's deputy arrived at the house. According to the report, my mother opened the door furious and immediately started arguing. "This is my daughter's home," she insisted. The deputy corrected her instantly. "No, ma'am. The legal owners are Claire Bennett and Ryan Bennett. You are being formally removed from the property." When she still refused to cooperate, the deputy warned her she could be arrested for trespassing. That finally ended it. My mother packed the same 3 suitcases she'd arrived with months earlier and left the house just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Olivia sent me video confirmation from the deputy's body camera showing my mother driving away. I watched it once. Only once. Then I locked my phone and sat in silence for a long time. Because even after everything she'd done, watching my own mother lose control of her life still hurt in ways I couldn't explain. But every time guilt tried creeping in, I remembered Lily sitting alone in the rain, and the guilt disappeared. We still couldn't move home immediately. The locks needed replacing again. CPS also required a safety inspection before Lily could return to the house. So we stayed in the hotel another few days. Lily returned to school the following Monday. The school administration had already been notified about the situation. My mother was officially banned from campus property. Lily's teacher called me after school that first day back. "She's very quiet," she said softly. "She barely talks to the other kids." "She's been through something traumatic," I answered. That same week, Lily started therapy with a child trauma specialist named Dr. Emily Carter, twice a week. At first, Lily barely spoke during sessions, but slowly, little pieces of her personality started returning. Small laughs, small smiles, tiny moments of normal. Then, on February 26th, Olivia called with another major update. "The district attorney reviewed the case this morning." My stomach tightened. And? They're filing charges. I sat down slowly on the edge of the hotel bed. What kind of charges? Child endangerment, criminal trespass, identity fraud related to the forged locksmith authorization. My chest tightened hearing it spoken aloud. She could actually go to prison? She could. A week later, Ryan finally came home. I will never forget that moment for the rest of my life. Lily spotted him first, walking through the airport terminal, carrying a backpack over one shoulder. She screamed, "Daddy!" and took off running before I could even react. Ryan dropped his bag instantly and caught her in his arms. She clung to him, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. "I'm here," he kept whispering. "I'm here now." When I finally reached them, Ryan pulled me into the hug too. The three of us stood there in the middle of a crowded airport, holding on to each other, while strangers walked around us. Nothing had ever felt safer than that moment. A few days later, Ryan and I stood outside our front door while a new locksmith replaced every single lock in the house again. This time, Ryan personally verified every document himself before any work started. When the locksmith finished, he handed Lily her own key first. Ryan knelt beside her and smiled softly. "This is your home, sweetheart. Your key will always work here." Lily looked down at the key in her hand like it was something priceless. "Can I try it?" "Of course." She slid the key into the lock carefully, turned it, and the door opened immediately. Tears filled her eyes. "It works," she whispered. Ryan kissed the top of her head. "It always will." Walking back into our house felt strange at first. The rooms were familiar, but something about the atmosphere had changed. For weeks, that place had existed in my mind like a crime scene instead of a home. Every corner carried memories of fear, anger, and betrayal. But Lily walked through the front door slowly, clutching her new key on a purple lanyard around her neck, and whispered, "It feels better now." Ryan squeezed my hand, and somehow, he was right. The Ring camera was still mounted beside the front door. For a long time, I couldn't even look at it without replaying the footage in my head. Lily sitting alone in the rain, my mother smiling through the window, the curtain closing. But eventually the camera stopped feeling like evidence and started feeling like protection. The district attorney officially filed charges in March. Count 1, child endangerment. Count 2, identity fraud. Count 3, criminal trespass. My mother pleaded not guilty during arraignment. Her attorney tried arguing that everything had been exaggerated into a misunderstanding between family members. But the judge had already reviewed the evidence package, the ring footage, Officer Ruiz's body camera, Martha's witness statement, the forged locksmith authorization, the CPS findings. The judge kept the protective order fully active. No contact, no phone calls, no messages, no third-party communication. For the first time in months, we had silence. Real silence, not fear-filled silence, peaceful silence. Still, the damage lingered. Lily woke up crying several nights a week, asking if the doors were locked. Sometimes Ryan would sit beside her bed for over an hour until she fell asleep again. Dr. Carter warned us trauma didn't disappear quickly. "She's learning safety again," she explained gently. "That takes time." So we gave her time, and slowly, little pieces of our daughter returned. She laughed at television shows again. She invited friends over again. She stopped jumping every time the doorbell rang. One afternoon in April, she came home carrying a new history project from school. Her teacher had allowed her to redo the assignment destroyed in the rain, and even offered extra credit because of everything she'd endured. Lily earned an A. She proudly taped the paper to our refrigerator, beside one of Ryan's military photos, and a drawing she'd made during therapy. The drawing showed a house with a blue front door. 3 people stood outside, holding hands beneath purple stars. "That's us," Lily said proudly. I felt tears sting my eyes. "Yeah, baby, that's us." A few weeks later, Ryan and I were cleaning up after dinner while Lily slept upstairs. He washed dishes while I dried them. After a long silence, he asked quietly, "Do you regret any of it?" I knew exactly what he meant. The police, the charges, the court hearings. choosing our daughter over my own mother. No, I answered honestly, not for 1 second. Even saying it out loud surprised me a little, because the truth was complicated. I still remembered the woman my mother used to be, the woman who helped me with homework when I was little, the woman who stayed awake with me after my father died, the woman who once loved me. But that woman no longer existed. The person who looked through a window at my freezing child and smiled before closing the curtain wasn't my mother anymore. Ryan rinsed another plate quietly before speaking again. Lily asked me something yesterday. What? She asked if it was wrong that she doesn't miss Grandma. My chest tightened. What did you tell her? I told her feelings aren't wrong, and I told her nobody gets unlimited access to her life just because they share DNA. I nodded slowly. That was the right answer. Ryan looked at me carefully. She said she never wants to see your mother again. I stared down at the dish towel in my hands for a long moment before answering. Then she won't. There was no hesitation in my voice, no guilt, no uncertainty, because protecting Lily mattered more than protecting anyone else's feelings. That realization changed something fundamental inside me. For most of my life, I believed family loyalty meant enduring pain quietly. I thought forgiveness was automatic, simply because someone shared your blood. But watching my daughter question whether she deserved love shattered that belief forever. A real family protects you. A real family doesn't leave a child outside in freezing rain. A real family doesn't weaponize cruelty. One evening near the end of April, Lily asked if we could plant flowers in the front yard. What kind? I asked. Purple ones, she answered immediately. So people know this is a happy house. The three of us went to a nursery together that weekend. Lily picked purple and white petunias and carried them around carefully like they were fragile treasures. We spent the afternoon planting them near the mailbox. Ryan accidentally pulled up grass instead of weeds, which made Lily laugh so hard she nearly fell over. When we finished, Lily stepped back proudly to admire the flowers. They're gonna grow, right? Yeah, Ryan told her. They'll grow. She smiled at the house for a long moment before saying quietly, Good. I want everyone to know this is a safe place now. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders and kissed the top of her head. It always was, I whispered. We just had to take it back. Sometimes late at night, after Lily goes to sleep, I still watch the old ring footage from February 13th. Not because I enjoy reliving it, and not because I want revenge. I watch it because it reminds me of something important. When I thought I was powerless, I wasn't. I had evidence. I had witnesses. I had the law. I had a husband willing to cross the world to come home to us. I had a neighbor who cared enough to step in. Most importantly, I had a daughter worth fighting for. My mother forgot something that night when she looked through that window and smiled at my child. She forgot cameras were recording. She forgot neighbors were watching. She forgot cruelty leaves evidence behind. And in the end, that evidence destroyed the life she tried to build through control and manipulation. The trial is still ahead of us. I don't know what the final verdict will be. I don't know whether my mother will ever admit what she did. But I know this. Lily sleeps in her own room now, with her own key hanging safely beside her bed. Ryan transferred into a stateside position, so he can be home every night. And our house finally feels like home again. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that protecting your child is never the wrong choice. Not even when the person hurting them is your own mother. Especially then. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who were supposed to protect you. And sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is choose peace over blood, truth over silence, and your child over family guilt. I lost a mother the night she left my daughter outside in the rain, but I gained something far more important. I proved to my little girl that she would never stand alone while I was breathing. No matter who turns against you, never apologize for protecting your child. Because real love protects, real family protects, and real homes are the places where your key always fits, where your voice is heard, and where you never have to question whether you belong.